Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Simona Kalvoda. I'm running the Czech Green Building Council here. And I have the pleasure to introduce you Carsten Svensson from, it says Saint-Gobain, but I think Ecophon is the most important word in it. And Carsten is going to talk about acoustics today, how it impacts on the users of the building, and how it impacts on our health. The trend is now moving from focus on building and construction to its users, and how the trend is being reflected in acoustics. It's Carsten's job to tell you.
Thank you. And I like the word being reflected. You already brought acoustics into there. So absorption or reflection. Nice to see you all here. Thank you very much. We will go through this a little bit. And at the end, come close. You know, don't be too scared. It's really good if you sit in the front. Only the naughty kids are at the back. We'll give it a little bit so you find your seat. Yeah, my name is Carsten Svensson. I'm Swedish. Svensson is very Swedish. Carsten is very Danish. Reflects the region where I come from, very close to Denmark, Malmö. Anyway, I flew in here and it's really nice to be here. And it's actually true that you said. We see that in green building certification schemes of today, actually, they're moving a little bit from the raw environmental aspects, you know, the impact on air, soil, to the human being. And I personally think that's really just a natural way it goes. And that means aspects like well-being, health, productivity are per definition going to be more important. And I believe then also that means that the indoor environmental quality will be even more important. So not only acoustics, but lighting, air quality, thermal aspects, etc. So I think this movement is really strong, and we will see it all countries globally. It's just a little bit the different pace, and we see it also definitely in the international labels. So I want to talk about a little bit also, because we do take in impressions from our world by using our five senses. And the visionary then, the vision is very strong, especially if you're not blind, right? So you take in everything like this. You see if there is any dangers, or if there is anything you should know, and then maybe you listen a little bit. Now, you shouldn't try it here, but when you come home in a very well-known environment, you should try to close your eyes and walk around in your flats or apartments just by listening to the space, actually. So just try to walk around and see, and you will be very surprised how you actually activate your hearing. You will all of a sudden take in information in a different way. You can check how close you come to the wall just by listening to the reflections from the wall, but without hitting it. I urge you to move slowly when you do this. Yeah. Anyway, so we will talk more about one sense here today, which is the hearing sense as such. Modern history, not too long time ago, tells us that we have created some horrible human workspaces. I say not human as such, but for human beings. Not too long time ago, when the open office actually was invented a little bit, certainly in America, it was just huge places where you put people, and it's like, here, work here, that's fine. And actually, I've seen places like this in Asia. They are actually not this enormously large, but they can be really, really big. And it's really hard to find your own space and your private life in this reality. But isn't it so? This looks a little bit like the way we treat animals sometimes. And I think that's also a little bit scary. And to reflect upon what you said, I just hope that we are moving into a little bit a more modern way of looking upon our environments. So we have some happy pigs and some happy birds and also some happy workers in the office, right? So let's move from this scary historic scenario into something which has a little bit more positive and progressive directions. So, Ecophon, Swedish-based company, and the reason for Saint-Gobain is we belong to quite a big French company, working with things that sometimes you don't even think about it, but when you take them away, you have huge problems. So, could be sound-absorbing ceilings like this. It could be funky stuff like this in the Google headquarters here, or Google office, or could be more organized like this. But actually, architecturally, since I would say 7-8 years, a little bit also more into vertical absorption, because architecture have changed a lot. So you have a lot of hard surfaces many times all over. And that actually forces us also sometimes to think about acoustics on the walls, either as absorption here or as diffusion, where you scatter it. So, what we are really interested in is not only the technical acoustic side of it, because that could be pretty boring actually. It's still interesting, but it could be pretty boring for most people we talk to. But it's the connection between the human being, the people in the office, for instance, and the technical objective reality in acoustics. We can measure this. Either we can measure it, or we can predict using all kinds of softwares or calculation tools. And the reason is, like, you have to measure the correct things when you talk about acoustics, because the things that most of us in this room think about when it comes to acoustics, you don't even know what parameter is corresponding to that, right? Maybe you have some relation to some parameters like decibels or things, but honestly, you don't know too much about decibels either, I think. So that's why I think for us, the big challenge is the connection between what you actually want to have or need to have in the office, for instance, and for us and the authorities or green building certification schemes, how can we measure and verify this in an appropriate way? And that is the world of Ecophon. So a lot talking to end users, you know, what is your problem? How do you perceive sound? Is noise a problem at all? And then what can we do about it? Or can we actually even verify that? Because then in a lot of countries you have standards, guidelines, and regulations that you have to comply with. So that's a everyday job situation for us. So I think just looking at the things, I'm just looking at when they asked 1,000 office workers in UK, they said, okay, 82% said that they actually are regularly distracted by office noise. And I think you are too, but we will come to that. But then interesting is, more than 30% of these people actually have, they need to leave the office because of this, to be able to actually do a good job. So they escape from the office and actually go into, either they go home or they go to the library or to the local cafe. So hands up, how many have escaped from your job situation and went to some of these places to get some peace and quiet to concentrate? Hands up. You can be honest, your bosses are not here. Yeah, you see. And maybe sometimes you do it totally voluntarily because you like to put yourself in another environment. And sometimes you are forced because you have a deadline, you need to finish your work. So when you ask these people, what is then the most disturbing noise that you have? Well, actually it's speech, people talking. And this is a paradox, because that's also what you like to hear. You also want to communicate with people. You actually want to hear what people say sometimes, but it depends what you do and when. So speech is definitely the worst thing. Loud telephone voices. How many of you have been standing up in an open plan, taking a telephone call with a heavy metal ringtone? Like, yeah, no, it's not so good, but it's very, very common. And then you have a few other things also. This is actually in Asia, they like to eat in the office also. So you have a lot of sounds from eating, like and noodles and things like that. So these are some of the things that people are annoyed by when it comes to sound. And also, looking at the open plan office, which is interesting in itself, because I actually just listened to Doug from Microsoft, who said that they have left the open plan office. They went into activity-based work, and now they're into a flexibility scenario, actually. So, but for some, it's very much a reality still. Now, looking at and asking people what they are concerned about, for instance, in an open plan space, is audible distractions, to hear things you don't want to hear, and also lack of audible privacy. You know, everything you say can be heard and be held against you. And uninvited interruptions from co-workers. And that is actually a very important thing, because every time you are interrupted, it takes, could take 20 minutes for you to get back on track. And that could be measured actually even in money, a lack of productivity. So I want to say that you have to think about a few different dimensions when you talk about sound in the office, for instance. The first one is the physical region, the actual architectural space, like this. And also the shape of our heads, like if you talk to me, sound comes first here, then it has to travel past my very big nose to the other ear, and that means you have a lack of time, you have a lack of frequencies, and a lack of sound pressure levels. So that's the physical region, actually. That's what we talk about. That's very interesting, but it's not enough, because you cannot only talk about the space and the architecture reality. You have to go to another region, to the physiological region. That is more or less how we perceive sound, actually. And that's a sensation. You can say all of us in this room more or less perceive sound the same, if you have okay hearing. So if I scream like this, you all wake up. Okay, yeah. And it's natural. That's just a physiological reaction, Just making sure you don't fall asleep. And this is very much the same. Okay. Now, we have another region which is really interesting, which is the psychological region. And there we talk about a preference. Okay, you hear if the sound is loud or not loud, if it's clear or not clear. You hear if it's sharp or not sharp. But do you like it or not? That's just a completely different question, because it depends on what you do, how you feel, who you are, etc. So you see, it's a little bit all these things, the three different dimensions, is actually making up each person's individual assessment of sound. So if you like the sound in this office, then maybe you don't like it for various reasons. Making it a little bit complicated, but also wonderful and beautiful. Because that means you have to talk about the architectural space, but you also have to know something about how people react to sound. And not only, you have to know something about psychology as well. Who you are. Are you introverts or extroverts or neurotics? Yeah. Because it matters. It may be so, actually, but it's true that introvert people can be more noise and sound sensitive than other people. And that's something you need to think about in the workspace here. So don't put the introverts exactly where it's the most noisy place, right? Something to think about when you plan and do the zoning of an office. So, in an open plan, I talk about that because it's a little bit the most challenging space when it comes to acoustics. In open plan, sound is spreading. So here, somebody is talking, blah, 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 and the sound travels in space. So what you can do is, you could of course work with the sound absorbing area up in the ceiling. Because why is the ceiling so appropriate? Well, that's the area that you don't use too much. You don't walk on it like a floor. It's already up there. So you can do something there. You also need to work with screens and you make sure that you put people in the right positions, depending on the activity, what they will do, but also actually who they are, if you want to be really picky. So make sure that sound is not spreading too far in an open plan space. And actually, co-working spaces, they do tend to have sometimes open plan spaces. Because if you buy your way in and buy the cheapest way in, usually it's buying a place in an open plan space. So you can sit anywhere you like. And then you may become disturbed, actually, just because you hear the sound coming from far away. So if you can soundproof this room, this is like a multi-purpose room, you have done quite a lot. Now also this is an open plan space or a multi-purpose space. I show this picture because sometimes we just talk about, it's an open plan space, and then we treat it like that. It's the same, which is not really true, because if you are having the mindset of what we call activity-based acoustic design, that means that actually this area is not the same. One size doesn't fit all. You can see all kinds of different activities is actually going on. Creative meeting here a little bit relaxing zone, people recover, get some energy, personal work, concentration, privacy, really difficult telephone calls, etc. You see, so when you design a space like this, it's not, you make it too easy for yourself just to say, it's going to be this solution, and then it will support all activities. You have to go a little bit deeper into the physiological aspects of people and who they are, the psychological aspects of people too. So separate noisy from quiet activities. Make sure that you don't put a call center function or a tech support function close to where people are doing programming or doing concentration work. So these are some of the things you have to think about when it comes to acoustics. And in the office, you can have a variety of different activities going on all the time, right? Informal meetings. Been through some really poor meeting rooms many times where it's really hard to talk, for instance. Flutter echoes between parallel walls. Maybe a very high sound from the ventilation. Shh. Masking, for instance, the telephone call you get coming in from America or India or some place where you need to have a very clear speech to understand properly. Multitasking, we looked at that a little bit. That's the open plan space, for instance. Very challenging. But I dare to say, because it's so easy to say, open spaces, it's not good for us. It's very damaging health. Well, we have some examples of that too. But if you really plan well from the beginning, bringing in the space itself, the people who are they, and the activities they do, all of a sudden you have great tools and possibilities to create good and very functional open spaces. You also have to tell the workers, why is this good? You know, not only, let's hope that they feel good when we put them in this position. So these could be, of course, teamwork, brainstorming could be quite noise intensive. Make sure they are not too close to any concentration areas. Phone intensive, this is call centers, I mentioned that. These are usually the most tricky activities. I often say try to put them off a little bit in another part of the office, because it's like ringtones all the time, or it's not so much now, but it's a lot of talking going on all the time. Welcoming areas could be the nice reception that you have, for instance. For us coming and going, we may be only spending 1 or 2 minutes there. But for the people working there, it's actually 8 or 9 hours a day. And that's actually a proper work environment area. I've seen so many welcoming spaces that actually have really bad acoustics, because often you have a lot of sound from people coming and going, elevators coming up, doors coming in, traffic noise coming in from outside. But the people who work there in the reception or in the service function, it's actually a proper work environment, occupational health aspect. So they should deserve a good acoustic situation there. So you can create like a room in the room, for instance. Think about that. Also, what I say, it's really interesting. Everybody's saying, acoustics is expensive, it costs money. Well, you know, it's both yes or no, to be very honest. If you absolutely have no acoustic fittings at all, if you only have raw concrete, yeah, of course, you go from nothing to something, that's it. If you already have a ceiling or have other fittings, it's actually more the choice of design that you choose that is tagged to the money. I've seen a lot of choices done where they choose really nice solutions, but they're actually acoustically horrible. So it was not directly a link to the acoustics as such. Now, when you look at this, you see that, well, this here, this cost actually, operating cost, has to do with the human being, the people. So it's not the building as such. So I often say, like, you know, if you think about this, what 90% is like 80 to 90% has to do with the people. Why should you not create good human workspaces from acoustic point of view, but also lighting, air quality, etc.? It doesn't make any sense. Because if you do, the payoff is going to be good, people will like it, and they will actually perform very well. So a few key things to think about. If it's an open plan space, try to minimize the sound spreading in this space, because if you do talk, it's okay if the people around you hear you, but 10 meters away, 20, maybe they should not hear what you're saying. You can do this using sound absorbing elements or screens, or you can make the layout in an intelligent way, etc. Place people in the right teams, you know, put them where they are supposed to be most of the time. Sometimes you have to think cross-functional, not just because you belong to a group. I have this manager, I should sit here. Put them where they actually benefit of sitting. That's really important. Also acoustically, that means they will talk to the people that are close to you. They will not scream 10 meters away. Whatever you do, and this is especially important from management top down, inform about the benefits when you do something with your work environment. It's very, very important. Why did you do this? And very seldom, it's not so inspiring to hear, we save money. You know, I mean, do you have some thinking about the organizational outcome? We want to be more efficient. We want to increase the speed of communication. So we think we can actually increase the product development, etc. So inform people why you do certain things. Then the buy-in is got to be better. And also establish some kind of an acoustical etiquette. Tell people it's not okay to stand in the middle of the space and talk loudly to your mother on the phone. It's not so good. Tell them, like, when you are in a meeting, okay, phone is ringing. I've seen this 10,000 times. They go out to the meeting area and then they start to talk. And people actually are working just outside the meeting room. So they disturb everybody else there. So give them some kind of a direction. We have a sound policy, or we have an acoustical etiquette. This is the way you should behave. And also include enough silent rooms. And I actually added this one variation because I strongly believe if you give people a variety of opportunities, spaces, and environments, people will like it. And depending on if they have a very diverse job situation, they can choose by the day or by the hour where they want to be. And that means you give people control. So if they have control over their own reality, that means they are gonna be happier most of the time. So if you give them this control, you may think, even if it's a variety or if it's activity-based, you know, maybe they will still sit in the same position 80% of the time. But these other 20% of the time, when they needed to concentrate or relax or whatever, they could choose to go somewhere else. And often I actually see that many places have too few silent rooms to go to when you have you need to take a Skype meeting or a telephone conversation or something. And things happen in our private lives too. So I mean, honestly, sometimes you need some privacy also when you're working. So I will just show a film here, which is a close by situation. Okay, I thought it will come up here. Or it should. Okay, it's not. Because it should come up here when we say, what if I try to cheat the system, go back and go forward? Okay, obviously not. Okay, I will not cry too many tears for this, because that means maybe we can go back to that and show it. It worked fine yesterday, but now it doesn't work, and I can't catch it anywhere. So that's fine. Anyway, that was a very nice case study locally. And actually, it was good in a sense, because this company, App Agent, they had a lot of meetings on Skype with the whole world. And they figured out the environment they were sitting in was actually really not functional from an acoustic point of view. So the activity, having Skype meetings, actually forced them a little bit to think about acoustics in a very nice way. If I can't show it, it's on our homepage. We have 2 YouTube channels, Ecophon TV or Acoustic Bulletin, so that's no problem. It's going to be there as well. So, coming to specifically co-working acoustics, because that's the theme of this whole session, right? People come and go and use different rooms and spaces depending on availability and depending on what they will do. Also depending on how much money they paid. Did they pay for a private room? Did they pay for a space in an open plan situation, etc.? That means you have to take in consideration a lot of different activities are going on. Concentration work, meetings, Skype video, etc. Have you acoustically fitted the space for all these activities? That's when I say it's really important to take a holistic approach to the acoustics and sound in these premises. It's very, very important. Not only fixing this room or fixing that room, because if you have done your job well from the beginning, you will not have a problem afterwards when you actually have the facilities in operation. If you have open plans, and they tend to have the co-working spaces, they need strict acoustic control. Not only from all the surfaces that you have, but also actually how they are layouted and the zoning of these spaces. Meeting and conference rooms, they need good room acoustics so you can hear clearly, but they also need to have good sound insulation between the spaces. How many of you have heard a very sensitive conversation from the room next to you? I think that is, and then when the other persons are talking, they don't know that they actually hear what you're saying in the other room, and that's even more sensitive. So, time for a little bit interaction at the end of this session. Don't worry too much. All you need to do is to raise your hand every now and then when you think it's appropriate. The first question is when, so in what type of work situation, do you get mostly disturbed by sound? And I have a few alternatives here. 1, concentration work, having meetings, doing phoning, doing distance activities, video, or others. How many is disturbed when you do concentration work? You think about the place you work right now, okay? Yeah, a few. Oh, you're modest. I just came from the Swedish election, so we have somebody counting the votes here. It's really good. I'll make a nice statistic presentation. Meetings, how many? Okay, not so many. So you have good sound insulation where you are. Good. Phoning, either you phoning or somebody else phoning? Yeah. Hands up really, so it gets clear for roughly half, right? How many are you? Video, Skype meetings. Do you have video conferencing? Yeah. This could be really tricky because acoustically, if you have a video conference, the space which is at the other side of the world that is your receiver and your own space actually interconnect with each other acoustically. So we say that they're coupled. It makes it really hard. So you need 2 good spaces. Others, any other situations you can think about? Sleeping? No, yes, yeah. Okay, good. Next one, yeah. What kind of noise makes you most disturbed in your office? Speech, ventilation, people walking around, machines like printers or others. How many is disturbed by speech? Wow, 60%, something like that. How many is disturbed by ventilation? Yeah. Yeah, because some people can be more sensitive to ventilation sound. Shh, like this. And you get really tired at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Or even 2, yeah. People moving around. Yeah. I was really disturbed by that too, actually. A lot of noise, both visual and actually audible. Machines, printers, coffee machines. Who is sitting next to a coffee machine? Yeah, that's a terrible thing. It's nice for the coffee lovers, but it's not good for you. Others? Okay, we move on. how do you think one can best solve the noise situation in your office where you work? Attitudes, room acoustic features, sound masking, insulation, or others. Changing people's attitudes, how many believe in that? Yeah, so the acoustical etiquette, you tell them, teach them how to do. I will not be too fast because my colleague is doing a fantastic job. What about acoustical ceilings and wall panels? So the room acoustic conditions.
I think this is the topic where it's difficult to get a feel how it really works.
Yeah.
Unless you see before and after.
That's a really good point. Because many of you have been sitting in a kind of a bad environment, and then maybe you change into a good one, and then you cannot understand how you can have spent 10 years in this environment. So it's actually true. So when I ask people, usually they don't really know. I was surprised, but so many of you had a conscience statement. We have a virtual reality tool also. You can come to our booth, Ecophon, if you like. We have some situations before and after, if I get the sound to work properly. What about sound masking? Is that something you have thinking? You add sound in an office because you think it's too quiet? Sound often sounds like shh. No? No? It doesn't happen. Yeah, white or pink noise or whatever. It's very common in America, for instance. Not so much in Europe, but it's coming a little bit. Sound insulation, either from outside traffic noise or from between rooms. You have a problem with that? No? So? Yeah? Yeah? Usually in private homes, they have a trouble with this. Rock music coming by or people walking like this. Something else? Others? No? And the last one. Have your office or you in the office taking any specific actions with regards to noise? Have you been working with attitudes? Have you told people to behave well? Have you installed something like room acoustic applications or something like this? What about the first one? Have you had this situation at your job, or is it too sensitive? Yeah, you did, yeah. Did you shape like a policy? Or did you tell a specific person to behave?
Yeah, small office with 2 people, but then that's more like individually. So like even the person having, let's say, own room.
Yeah.
So you bloody close your at least you
Or you're fired. Yeah, I know, yeah. Yeah, you can, because some people are very loud, actually. They are very loud. And they are not conscious about that. Their loudness is very disturbing. What about this one? Installing, have you done something like that? The room acoustic quality somehow? Thank you all. Really nice. Yeah. Could be different things, ceilings, wall panels, screens, or whatever. And sound masking obviously is not an issue. It's not so much in here. Oh yeah, yeah. We have natural sound masking from the ventilation.
watching television.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And sound insulation, someone have done something in the office? Okay, yeah, a little bit. From outside, inside, between rooms. Yeah.
Between rooms, insulation, it's
Yeah,
the biggest issue.
yeah. Okay. I think I'm pretty much on time. Or
Sort of.
sort of.
Sort of.
That means we have finished this session. Movie could not be seen, but it's actually on a YouTube channel, so it should be no problem. If you have anything more you want to confess, you're very welcome to come to the Ecophon stand. That's with all the really nice wooden features over there, and to have a casual discussion about this.
Well, Carsten, thank you very much
Yeah.
for your very quick insight into such a complex issue of acoustics. I'm sure that there would be many questions, but we're actually a little over time. So if you want to talk to Carsten directly, you can do it outside, either in the wooden booth,
Yeah.
Několik, or just catch him just outside.
That's right.
Because
What I
we
will
have
do,
to
I will put
change
myself
here.
outside just briefly, and then I will move myself to the booth. And then I'm in the panel discussion in the afternoon, also 3:30. Okay? Thank you all. You've been fantastic.